Hi, Hatsi, Hauka. I'm Steff Saavedra. I'm Ñoño in Pueblo, and I've had an amazing opportunity to converse with two amazing indigenous women healers. Phoebe Valenzuela Ynez, a doula. She, her, she is Mixteca, Zapoteca, Lipan Apache, Spanish, and Sicilian. And Johanna Yanez, a sobadora, she, her, ella, she's Chicana, and both will be sharing with us some more wonderful information. And we will be discussing what reproductive justice means for Indigenous women and retaining our traditions. Please join us on NCSD Women's March on YouTube. Thank you, and we look forward to having you join us and seeing you all. Nauma. The first question is, what is a doula?
I am a traditional birth worker, but have served within the capacity as a doula over the past 7 years. And a doula, I think it's important to think about where the word originates from. So it actually comes from ancient Greek, and the word ule means woman's servant, and ulos was a slave servant. But in the 70s, anthropologists coined it as doulas, as they referred it to a person that had been trained to assist in childbirth and support families after childbirth, so in the postpartum period and beyond. And now it's come to evolve as a person who has been trained that is not a medical provider, but can support families through educational support, physical and emotional support as they prepare for childbirth and beyond. And there's actually many different kind of doulas. There are full spectrum doulas, which support loss, abortion, childbirth, and postpartum. You have doulas that just show up in the postpartum period. And there's also death doulas. So on the other end of that cycle of life, preparing to transition to the spirit world. So I can appreciate where the word doula has evolved to as far as the intersectionalities of birth work, right? That it's created an avenue for reproductive justice for communities such as Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, and LGBTQ communities as well. But I think it's important to remember also as Indigenous people that we have had our traditional birth attendants always and forever. And they were and are, continue to be today, reverenced for the work. The word doula has kind of that negative connotation attached to it, right? To be like a slave or a servant. Because for us traditional birth workers, it's a great honor to be called into a path of service rather than being like enslaved, you know? You'll see that a lot of people, as they're coming into birth work and especially wanting to honor those ancestral ways, those original birthing ways of birth keepers, that they're moving away maybe from identifying as a doula.
So, Johanna, can you tell us a little bit more about what a sobadora does?
So a sobadora is a traditional Mexican indigenous body worker. They use touch to heal. In American culture, we have massage that's thought of as a relaxation, as pampering, as luxury. And sobadora and sobada is very focused on healing. It's very more therapeutic, healing the mind, healing the soul, using traditional techniques, using, like we really get into massaging the abdomen, internal organs, the uterus. These are all really important foundations for health. And so it's not a luxury. It's not something you do every once in a while. It's something that you do to practice health.
So can you both tell me a little bit about your clientele?
Sure. So I'm a certified massage therapist, and I'm also a practicing sobadora. And my clients range from my friends, my family members, my community, from a 10-year-old girl who is coming to heal from painful periods to a woman who has had a hysterectomy and is trying to help with the symptoms of that. So I see a lot of Filipino American women. I see a lot of Ethiopian, Somalian immigrants, people from a lot of women from the Middle East. All of this traditional healing of womb massage, of sobada de matriz, yoni steam baths, healing with herbs. This is all very, very much culturally rooted within these communities. And there's a lot of similarities. I see women that's, from Ethiopia, from the Philippines, and they're so happy to find this practice here in the States. They're like, I don't have to fly all the way home to get sobada de matriz, which is something called different in their language. So what I do is I help women heal their reproductive system through these traditional methods. People that are going through menopause, this is something that is really good for helping with that transition. It's something that is very beneficial to help with the symptoms of the negative symptoms and have it be more of a smooth transition.
Oh, like personal summers. Yeah. These personal summers or something else.
I'm postpartum. She just worked on me.
Right?
I see postpartum. I literally see everything. And I see people that have been sex trafficked. I see people that are coming to reconnect and re-empower themselves by connecting with their bodies, and people that want to take back their power and learn how to orgasm. And we talk about that. Mm-hmm. So it is very much rooted in reclaiming traditional healing methods of reproductive health, of practicing reproductive health. And so, I see a wide range of people and do a wide range of therapies within that.
What is your understanding of reproductive justice? And how are you able to, basically bring that in to your to what you do for your clients? Like you just mentioned, there's so many different facets, and healing is a huge aspect of it, and that comes with the reproductive justice aspect. How do you implement it into your practice?
Well, in a society that is very patriarchal, that devalues women's bodies, that devalues our voice, speaking with women and educating them on and empowering them, teaching them self-womb massage, teaching them how to do yoni steam baths, teaching them how they can heal themselves through the power of plant medicine. This is all something that we talk about, and that reproductive justice expands towards even teaching them, letting them know that they can have a voice in their doctor's office. And there's many a times that I get, the stories that I hear of abuse that happen in a doctor's office during birth, or even during fibroid removal. I have a story, an example is, I've seen so many women of color in particular, who come to heal from myomectomy, which is removal of fibroids in their uterus. And they've undergone 2-3 surgeries to remove the fibroids. And then they just keep returning. And then finally, the doctor will say, or I'll tell them to test the doctor, like, can you check my vitamin D levels, which is a cause of the vitamin D deficiency is a cause of fibroids. So they go, oh yeah, let's do that. Oh wow, you're super deficient in vitamin D. Let's address that. And then through finding, and it's like, it took 3 surgeries to get to a place where we're going to try to finally address the root cause and try to be more integrative with health. Like, why is that happening? Surgery is traumatic, And another example I see a lot with young women, girls who come to see me, is that they're having painful periods. I myself had painful periods and had my first sobada at 15 years old. And the only solution the doctor will give them is birth control, birth control, birth control. Now, a lot of these young, 10-year-old, 11-year-old girls are not ready to be on birth. They don't want that. They just want to have a painless period. So I'm able to address that with yoni steams, with vaginal steams, pelvic steams, with the womb massage, self-womb massage, and the power of plants. To me, reproductive justice is not just bodily and reproductive autonomy. It is being educated on learning how to care for yourself, learning how to care for yourself during your moon cycle, which is what we call your period. So having that seen is not an ailment or an illness that needs to be cured, but something to be worked with. And so, yeah, that's one facet of it.
Well, I mean, if either of you would like to just kind of shed a little bit of light as to environmental factors on the health of mothers and their children.
Well, in relationship to, and that really ties into reproductive justice also, right? I really like Sister Songs, or a woman of color collective on reproductive justice, and the way that they define reproductive justice is not only about bodily autonomy and having like complete sovereignty, right, over the decisions to have a child or not have a child, but they also talk about the right to parent in a sustainable environment. When we look at demographics or populations of what environments are most sustainable, that's happening on the reservations, right, or in the barrios, in the hood, right? So you can look at, let's start with global warming. So if we look around us and we look at the seasons and we look how things are not as they should be, especially we're here on Kumeyaay land, and I live out in the mountains. So, and I have for the past 10 years been in the backcountry where I spend a lot of time with the land and seeing the cycles and the seasons. Well, right now we're completely in a drought and our native plants have been affected. So our plant medicines, our traditional foods, ancestral foods, people are not having access to that. I've seen a lot of growers and seed keepers last year talk about the grasshopper apocalypse, where basically all these grasshoppers were coming and eating all of the maize, and these are ancestral foods that carry encoding and stories that we're supposed to eat and feed our babies, right? It's part of our survival and our resiliency. We can look at the oak trees around here. They've been infested with the beetles. And what we know about the oak is the oak, when we make like oak porridge or mush or shawi or these different kind of traditional foods that we prepare with the acorn, is that, that has a high source of folic acid, which is what we really need high amounts of in pregnancy. So if we're not having access to our traditional foods, this totally impacts our reproductive health, our babies, our genetic coding. That's just touching the surface of it. Then we can look at water poisoning. We can look at government and law tactics that have been put in place to continue to oppress Native people. If we look at the Navajo Nation, just over there on the Navajo Nation, on the reservations and surrounding areas, there's about 500 abandoned mines that were used to mine uranium. And so we see, I have relatives that I've spoken with that have experienced and talk about their relatives experiencing high rates of miscarriages. And then there's also birth defects because the water is radioactive. And what we know about water, not only is it about drinking, right? And we can think about communities where it's hard to even get fresh bottled water to drink, but also it's water that we pray with, and especially in birth. It's the first medicine that surrounds our babies. So what's happening to our water that we use in our ceremonies of birth, and that also is what we take into our body to pray with. So that there's a lot when we talk about environment, and we can, if we're looking at urban indigenous communities, right, and we're looking like inner city or in the hood or in the barrios, we can look at pollution. Like there's laws in place where these communities are being oppressed by having high levels of pollution. And so we can look at epigenetics and how that affects, the gene expression of babies, and maybe even female or fetuses that are females, right? That how their seeds, their eggs are going to be affected as well. Definitely the other part is that we don't get enough data, right? Like Native women in general, the stories aren't being included. Like there's books that are being written by Native women to amplify the voices of Native women. And a good book that I like is called Mothering of Nations. That's a really good book because it amplifies the voices and stories of Native women. And this is how we're collecting our data. Hopefully that answers a little bit of that question.
Yeah, just touching on the surface, it's so deep. What you ladies do for various communities is just so critical and so absolutely important. Thank you both. If there's anything either of you would like to add, please.
I want to highlight a little bit of what Johanna, what you were saying about like the young people coming in, right? The 10-year-olds or the ones that are like coming into their moon cycles or moon time. That it was so beautiful how you worded that as a part of reproductive justice, because reclaiming and remembering our traditions, like that is true sovereignty, right? To be able to walk into these rites of passages in life, whether it's when we are entering that time of to prepare for that rites of passage into the moon time, or preparing for birth, or going into your menopausal years, to have those traditions that so many have either they've been almost eradicated from many communities, or lost, or have had to been hidden, or what I've been told by a lot of elders even down in Mexico is like the people within the community, the youngsters, like they don't want to learn it because they're being forced to go work like in the city, right? In the FA or other places, like they can't even survive within their indigenous communities. So it's really beautiful to highlight that as reproductive justice, because I think we get caught in like the other part of it, which is important, but being for like people with indigenous lineage to be able to bring it back to those
reclaim
roots
and empower themselves with that knowledge that we've always had that has gotten lost through colonization. So it's a lot to dig into, but with that we'll say, getting back to our roots, getting back to the heart of this medicine is powerful.
So one of the things that we had wanted to share with our organization, with everyone, is that it's called a waning moon. So basically, rather than calling it period poverty, and with all these, especially now with the pandemic and just such challenging times, if a mother needs to choose between feminine products and feeding her family, and so we call it a waning moon, and we've done it in the past to where we have supplies available so that it can lessen the stress, so that it can just kind of ease in that transition, because it's a normal everyday thing, and it should be included in our needs, in not just food. And it's just so absolutely important. If you ladies had wanted to share any thoughts about that, that would be awesome.
Access to, tampons are oh, don't get me started on tampons. Tampons are okay if they're pesticide free, if they're not bleached cotton. So making sure that the products that you're using, especially if they're tampons and they're sitting in you for hours, that they're clean and you're not absorbing all of those toxins.
And I think it's almost about the same price now to get a pack of pads that are natural, with natural cotton, they're unbleached, like good quality, that I would just ask that those that are contributing to these packages, that sounds like it's what you're providing, that to be mindful like that, to be mindful, because just because different, people have less or are different socioeconomical statuses or classes, like we all deserve the best, and our wombs deserve our best. What else is really good? Teas, just simple teas, like maybe if people are willing to contribute in that way, warming cinnamon tea, something real basic that is warming to the body. That's something that is really important when you are either bleeding or pregnant, all these different times in our reproductive health journeys.
Wonderful. Thank you, ladies, so much for taking the time, to share with us your thoughts, and, just not everybody knows, not everybody understands what a doula is, or a sobadora, or some of these other things. And thank you both so much. We are incredibly grateful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Steph.
having us.
Take care.